incredible young lady sitting across from me, the incredible, the very talented, the gifted, the creative LaDonna Raeh. LaDonna, glad to have
You
you
know,
on the
I'm
show, a
I'm
part of the
really starting to
team.
feel like you buttering me up every week
I'm,
because when the weather is negative 9 degrees and we come in studio regardless, I'm starting to feel like you buttering me up.
sometimes LaDonna, when people tell the truth, it seems like buttering up.
Right.
You see, I'm just telling the truth.
I
Is that
appreciate
you
that.
are everything I said.
You are so kind for that. And yes, I am LaDonna Raeh, the producer and co-host of the Wake Up Show Chicago, and also I'm on VON throughout the week. But I would be remiss if I did not introduce our other guest host today, because I feel Larry, you're a guest host. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. This is your show, but but I want to make sure that we introduce our
That's where
next.
the problems start, right there.
Right there, the head gets so big. But good morning, family, and thank you for tuning in. And make sure you share the show if you're on Facebook Live. We'll get the camera situation set up in just a moment. But I am here to help, lay the ground and everything. But I want to introduce you to actor, director, writer, and advocate for human trafficking, or should I say anti-human trafficking, um,
Yes.
Lorenzo T. Hughes.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Wake Up Show.
Now, you can adjust your microphones, both of you. I feel like I have to give
Oh,
you all
no.
a tutorial because
It's,
normally Lorenzo sits there, but we are in studio. And of course, we have on the phone, we have a special guest for you guys. But before we get started, I want to make sure that you get Robert Johnson on the line, however he's going to join us. And Robert, if you can hear the sound of my voice, we don't see you on our video, so you may have to log in and log back out, or just call the station with the number I provided to you. So today, Larry, what are we talking about? Let's
Well,
get the audience ready.
absolutely. Well, first, let's give a shout out to our sponsors, to Wind Creek Southland, who's been a great sponsor for the organization. And, again, I think they deserve, a degree of accolades for their willingness to support the community and do a lot of positive things. So, a shout out to Wind Creek Southland for the work they do, not only with the chamber, but with a lot of people. And Kathy Amons and all the great people at Wind Creek, thanks a lot for your support. Hey, today we're going to talk about a number of things, but it's always about money. It comes back, and I tell people all the time, and sometimes people say, Larry, it's always about money for you. Well, since money represents 80% of our problems, then money should be a conversation that we ought to have, and the things that can impact money and who we select in office, how procurement works, and the policies that people make impacts our ability to participate. And I often go back, to the same old conversation that we have and pointing out the fact that we help build the country. And as we help build the country, we did not economically participate, whether it be the GI Bill, whether it be Reconstruction. There was a lot of challenges that we had. But in spite of all the challenges, LaDonna and Lorenzo, Black people have still been resilient, and they've continued to endure and continue to thrive and do incredible accomplishments. Sometimes, a lot of times, we didn't get credit for what we did, but we did it in spite of, and we're still doing it, and we're going to continue to do it. We're going to continue to strive for Black excellence in terms of who we are, what we do. And so I'm excited to be a part of this conversation today about the politics and about policy. Because I serve on the Procurement Policy Board in the state of Illinois, and and I've also served on the BEP Council for quite a number of years with the incredible Charlotte Roberts and uh, my other friend who was there for quite some time. She's on that committee, I think, Sharon. So when you serve on those committees represent the state in terms of how we participate as it relates to contracts and opportunity. And for many years, the numbers were bad. And I don't want to tell people that the numbers are good because they're not great. They've gotten a little better, but they haven't gotten where it needs to be. And so we're always involved in the conversation, guys, about how do we make it happen? What do we need to do? And one of the things that we recognize that when we set policies up and we take a look at procurement, and I'll give a quick example, is that we've often heard us talk about at the chamber policy. And one of the policies that we were proud to be engaged in was the sheltered market. And the sheltered market um, is basically, and I'll reiterate it because I think a lot of the listening audience have heard it before, but it says that at every BEP council meeting, there shall be an opportunity to discuss discrimination. And if you find there is discrimination, you shall establish a sheltered market to correct the discrimination, and it can be negotiated, non-negotiated bid. Now that was a law that sat on the books for quite some time, but was never enforced. We finally got a governor to enforce it, and we've been pushing forward in terms of the sheltered market. But remember what I said is that at every there'll be an opportunity to discuss discrimination. If you find it, you shall establish a sheltered market. Well, what's happening right now, unfortunately, is that the BEP Council isn't meeting, and they're not engaged in meeting. Um, so we're not establishing sheltered markets. And I'm going to pause for a moment, LaDonna, because I think we have our incredible guests. So why don't you introduce our guest who's coming aboard?
Well, of course, we have attorney Robert Johnson on the line from Solomon Group, who has been with the chamber and a friend of the chamber and the show for quite some time. Welcome to the show, Robert Johnson.
Good morning, LaDonna. Good morning, Larry and Lorenzo. How are you guys doing this morning?
Good morning.
Fantastic.
You know, Robert, I just want to give a shout out to Steve Davis, who invited you and I to be at fight night at the University Club. It was an awesome time. Some great fights.
I
at
heard
the
y'all
same
were cutting
time.
up.
And we were having a fantastic time. A lot of great people who were there. But let's get down to business, Robert. We were just talking, LaDonna and the team, about money and about procurement and about politics and setting policy. Robert, you've been around for a number of years and have great insight as an attorney. You know, you were one of the critical attorneys for McDonald's, and you just give us a little bit of your background and tell us how do you feel about politics and business.
Well, thanks again, Larry. And yeah, shout out to Steve. It was a great event. So just to put a thumbnail on it, I mean, I've been a lawyer for 30 years, but I've been a serial entrepreneur for almost 40 years, since the age of 12. And so the topics that we're talking about are near and dear to my heart in terms of the role of Black business in Illinois and across the country, and the need for us to be engaged in the political arena. I was listening to the conversation that you all were having in terms of just the impact of the policies that impact our daily lives as entrepreneurs and as citizens of the great state of Illinois. And it's imperative that we be engaged in the political process. As a lawyer, I would often say that everything that you do you're not considered alive until you're issued a birth certificate, which is a legal process. You're not considered dead until you're issued a death certificate, which is a legal process. And everything in between is governed by the law, which is inextricably intertwined with politics and policy. And so when you put that in the context of you as an individual and you as a business owner, everything that happens from a legislative standpoint impacts how you move in this society. And so for us not to be intimately engaged in politics and to think that politics is something that happens outside of us is unrealistic. You always hear, follow the money. Well, the money flows to politics, and that's how it flows to business. So one of the things that you all have been, brilliant in doing is creating the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce Political Action Committee. as a method for our Black businesses to get engaged in politics and understand the role of politics and begin to develop relationships with politicians rather. I liken it to what happened during the pandemic when, the whole world shut down and, folks were trying to figure out how they were going to literally survive, and especially businesses in the business community. And those PPP loans that came out, which were a lifeline that saved a lot of businesses, those were as a result of folks having a relationship. The first folks that got those were the folks that had a relationship with their banker. Literally, their bankers called them up, if you remember, and said, hey, there's this program that will allow you to get these grants or these loans to help your business survive. And they were doled out to folks who had those folks who had a relationship with their banker. And what we saw as a result of that is that a lot of Black businesses didn't get those needed funds because although they had a business bank account, they didn't have a relationship with their banker.
And
I use
Robert,
that analogy.
Oh, no, I know you're going to talk about the analogy, but I want to make sure that people really hear this part, because Black business owners avoid politics too often, even though politics affect their bottom line. So you said you use this analogy to do what? I just wanted to make sure everybody zooms in.
Yeah, I use this analogy because you teed it up perfectly, because the same thing is true with politics. When money is doled out, when opportunities are doled out, when contracts like Larry was speaking about relative to procurement, it is a result of relationships. If you don't have those relationships with politicians, you're not in the know. You're not in a position to take advantage of opportunities and see things that are available to help not only you, but your community. And so that's why it's important. When I was in Springfield last year, and I've said this a few times on this show, one of the things that I constantly hear is about the different relationships or the different approaches that the different groups take as it relates to their relationship with politicians. And the statement that I'll say is that when you look at the relationship, for the most part, with the Black community and Black politicians, we look at Black politicians as leaders. We're looking at them to tell us what to do, versus the relationship that the white community and the Hispanic community has, and the viewpoint that they have with regard to their politicians. They look at them as children to be told what to do. So I say that to say is that we have to have a much different understanding of the role of politics and the interplay of what needs to happen for us to be able to get the things that we want. We have to be able to be in a position to tell them that this is what we want, this is what we need. That is literally why they're elected. But instead, we wait for them to tell us what to do. And that really stems from, in my view, an issue that we've talked about on this show before, is that we don't have a Black agenda. Oftentimes, we don't have the data. We don't have a plan or an understanding of what's happening in our communities or even in our business environment, so that we can impact those decisions.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. When there's construction, even in our communities, a lot of times we don't even know that a road is about to be closed. And so, or some infrastructure project is about to take place. And oftentimes those infrastructure projects or those road closures or that construction is as a result of somebody else saying that this is something that they want because it's going to benefit their business. What is the impact of that? A road closure then impacts those Black businesses that are affected because now folks can't get to their business. They didn't even know that this was happening. Mm-hmm. So now they go to the politician or to their alderperson and complain. Well, it's too late. It's too late now.
I got a question.
Because
when I see those businesses that say open during construction, they already got a heads up in certain communities versus other communities?
Exactly, because those things can't happen unless somebody makes them happen. And so if you're not in the know, you're not in a position to be able to plan for those contingencies that are taken, for those things that are taking place And so your business is impacted. And so what typically happens is then we go complain about it, but it's too late at that point. It would have been better to have been in on the front end and know what's happening, to say, hey, this is going to impact my business. I need you to do this in phases or after this time period, because this is when I have my most sales. But by not being engaged in the politics of your community, you don't have a voice. And so you get acted upon, and as opposed to acted with.
And Larry, before you jump in, I want to remind people that you can give us a call at 773-591-1690. And I want to ask a question to the audience. Why do you think so many Black business owners avoid politics, even though politics affect their bottom line? Give us a call. Mama D, I see you holding. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, well, I think it's important because we have, three different people in the studio with different perspectives sometimes. So, LaDonna, I like to ask you, why do you think politics and business is so important? And same thing to Lorenzo. Give us your insight of what you think, and then let's take a caller. And then I know we got a special guest coming on that Robert's going to introduce.
Sure.
And we can get right down to business. So, LaDonna, give me your perspective in terms of from where you're sitting, and where you're sitting is where you're sitting.
If you don't know how politics works, politics is part of a greater system. If you don't understand the rules of engagement and you don't know how this works, then you're in a bubble. And because you're in a bubble, your doors, you can't function that way. Being a former owner of a grocery store, brick and mortar, community engagement was very important. And if we didn't know the rules, we had to pay the price. And that's where you fall into poor man tax by not knowing. People perish for what they don't know.
Absolutely.
That's my perspective. Lorenzo?
I was listening to the conversation from the beginning, and I know Larry kind of started out asking the question, what do we do to make it happen? Number one is through understanding and awareness. I think Mr. Robert Johnson, he talked about policies and laws that impact our daily lives. And that's what policies and laws do to us. They impact our daily lives. If we're not in understanding or awareness of what those laws are and those policies are, they're definitely going to affect our daily lives. And I think Mr. Johnson also mentioned relationships. If we're not developing relationships, and and I'm not even talking just inside of our own culture, but outside of our culture, we're gonna live our daily lives without understanding and without awareness. That's one of the benefits of having thriving and healthy relationships. That way, we can network and communicate with each other.
Absolutely. One of the things that we're going to, before we close out today, we're going to talk about what we need to do. But I think, it's great to have good conversation, but, like Dr. Sterling says, activity is not accomplishment. And what we need to do is have a real game plan, because what happens, I think, sometimes in the Black community, in Black business community, is that we do not stay very focused on the agenda. We get started, we stop. And government sometimes only operates when there's a degree of pressure, when they hear from the collective community that there's a problem, that they're not participating. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But at this point in time, let me go switch it back to you, LaDonna. Tell us, we got a caller next?
Yeah, we got callers.
Okay.
All right, Mama D, you're live.
Well, y'all got rising. When it comes to politics, under the Families Tax Cut Act, the Trump account offers Head Start toward financial security from the moment babies are born by giving every citizen born between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2028, a one-time $1,000 government seed to be invested in a broad stock market index. If fully funded and left untouched until age 18, it could grow to $1.9 million by age 38. And with the $625 billion grant from Michael and Susan Dale's commitment, the first 25 million American children aged 10 and under living in zip codes with an income below $150,000 will receive an additional $250. Now, my question is to get these. Do you need a relationship with your bank to access the $1,000 for your child?
Mama D, that's a great question. And unfortunately, I don't know if I can answer that. What I will do is that if you leave your number, we will make sure that we get an answer. What I hate to do is shoot from the hip and not answer the question very specifically. And I think that's a very good question. Thanks for the information, because I don't think everyone knew about this. At least I didn't know about it. And I think I submit probably a lot of people don't know about it at the
Mhm.
same time. So thanks a lot for your insight. And please leave your number so we can reach back out to you and get you the right answer on the question you asked us. Hey Robert, I know you're going to be introducing our special guest. We got some pretty important things coming up in terms of elections because it matters, who's in office and who's representing you. I'm often struggle, I think, sometimes with the fact that you know policies are written and sometimes they're written without clearly understanding what's important to us.
Mm.
And I'm not blaming politicians for that. I blame us for not making ourselves available. And it's a simple thing, like even going down to Springfield and spending time in Springfield, lobbying our legislators. And if you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And we have to change that if we're going to be effective. We got to understand the game and the rules of the game and how to be more effective at getting things done. Because when we take a look at the state, whether it be Department of Correction, HFS, Department of Revenue, um, IDOT, Tollway, any of these companies, they're doing business. And the question is, are they doing business with us? Now, and that's a deeper question, not just are they doing business as if it's that simple, because we have to also be prepared and make sure that we got our act together at the same time.
Mhm.
So, Robert, you're going to be introducing the next young lady who's coming on, who is a doing an incredible job with an incredible organization. But I'm gonna let you talk
I don't
about
think
that
she's on yet.
because now, okay,
Mm-mm.
well, let's keep on rolling. When she gets on,
Yeah, we got
we
callers.
we'll take the other calls. Go ahead, LaDonna.
All right, let's roll. Hey, Art, you're live.
Live. Hey, what's going on, young people, and how are
What's
you
going
all
on?
this morning?
Doing
Fantastic.
swell.
Here's the question. What is stopping Black men and women to start our own union when it comes to the trades, electrical, plumbing, heating, HVAC? Who is stopping us, and why don't we have lawyers who call in on the radio and have programs, sit down and start our own trade union so we can go lobby for rebuilding and re-strengthening the Black families and put these mechanisms in place so when you go to Springfield, they know they're going out there to push making the Black family popular and rebuilding it. Who's stopping us from doing our own union? So when we sit down at the table to get a piece of the cake, we're sitting down there with power, and power is in the strength of starting with the creator,
Yeah.
the Black man, the Black woman, and Black children. I'll leave with that. I would like to hear your answer, but God continue to bless.
And focus on the Black family. All
Yeah,
right.
okay. Well, Art, let me say this: is that there is a Black union, but there's a lot more to that because sometimes people don't want you. It's like they didn't ever want African Americans to have their own cities, their own banks. And when we did have it, they burnt it down. So it's not as easy. And I don't want to come across on the radio show with very easy answer without drilling down and making sure people understand. It's what we should always be expanding our own independence. But what it takes in order to get a union started, there is a union. If Tom Harris or Vince Gilbert is out there, they can give you a little bit more information about that. But we have one, but we got to support it, and we got to make sure that legislators respect it, because even though you have it, don't mean that people recognize it or people are doing what they should be doing in order to make sure that if people don't join that union, They don't have the dues and the fees and everything else. So, Donna, I'm going to pass it back to you because I think
Absolutely.
we can move on with our next guest.
Yeah, we have our next guest online. And Robert, we're going to have you introduce our very special guest. So go ahead. And we see callers out
Thank you.
there, just so they know.
Thank you, LaDonna. I have the extreme pleasure, and I think it's a perfect segue from the last couple of callers and just a great synopsis to what we've been talking about in terms of the role of Black business, how when Black businesses come together, that they can exercise power and they can provide a collective voice that speaks to the needs of Black businesses and the Black community. And there's an organization such as that in Chicago. It's the Business Leadership Council, and it is led by its fearless leader, Kiana Barrett, who is the Chief Executive Officer, who is just a powerhouse in Chicago. And if you don't know her, you soon will, and you'll learn all about the wonderful programs and the support that the BLC provides to its members. And more importantly, one of the things that I love about Kiana and the BLC is that they're always looking to reach out and create partnerships and to forge alliances that strengthen the Black community. And so I'm happy to say that that's something that they've done with Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce. We're working with them as well as a number of other organizations that she'll talk about to put on a candidates forum, which she'll talk about. As we all know, this is the political season where a lot of our colleagues are running for political office. So this presents an opportunity to hear directly from those candidates about what it is that they intend to do if elected to support Black businesses and the Black community, and for them to earn our support and for us to have an opportunity to hold them accountable. So without any further ado, I would love to introduce to the audience Kiana Barrett.
Welcome to the show, Kiana.
Well, good morning, and thank you so very much for having me. Thank you, Robert, for that introduction. I really do appreciate being able to unite and have, meaningful conversations about how we advance collective public policy and how we continue to advance the needle for the African American community. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And because of you, we named the name of this show is Policy, Power, and Black Business Participation. So we thank you for coming on board.
Yeah, Ms. Barrett, it's always a great pleasure to the work that you do with the BLC, an incredible organization. But take a moment to tell us why this forum is important. Give us some insight and give us a little bit of your background and talk a little bit about the BLC, but get down to why this forum is important and tell people the dates and times and how they can participate. Because it's going to be an exciting time for people to be well informed about who they vote for and why they vote for those individuals. And this will be business focused, as I understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Larry. This past Monday, we observed the 97th birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's ever so poetic that we are very much at the intersection still of fighting for economic parity and empowerment. And so the Business Leadership Council was founded with the mission to advocate on behalf of Black businesses to ensure that we have not only a seat at the table, but that we are attuned to the needs of our communities, that we have access to capital and opportunity, and that we curate a culture of collaboration. And it is that spirit that continues to drive us forward. So as we think about just this political climate that we're in, we cannot afford to be disconnected and disengaged. Reverend Willie T. Barrow used to say that we are not so much divided as we are disconnected. And so our North Star is, as an organization, to align with other like-minded entities that are looking to make collective impact and measurable impact that we can actually use as leverage to be accountability partners for our policymakers. And so for the state of Illinois alone, this election is very critical. We will have, if my analysis is correct, 5 freshman members of the House of Representatives. And we are conceding a great deal of seniority in the House. And so given that, there's an imperative that we have very learned, very bold leaders that are going to represent our interest for the state and for the nation. And so we decided to once again convene some very impactful thought leaders, such as those that we're talking with today, to create a candidates forum so that we could, one, lay out a very clear agenda for Black businesses to be able to make a clear message as to what we need in order to continue to create opportunities. And I was listening earlier in the conversation, and the description of how, as a race, we treat our elected officials and having a reciprocal relationship is very much important. So we're not going to assume that these legislators know what we need of them, but we're going to work in tandem with them to ensure that they have a clear understanding as to how we can impact change. And so for the 2nd Congressional District, we will have a candidates forum on February 12th, and we're partnering with the Chicago Urban League and a myriad of other organizations. And the Urban League has just opened a magnificent empowerment center on 83rd and Stewart. And so they're going to open their doors to the community for this critical conversation from 5:30 to 7:30 on the 12th of February. That following Thursday, we will host a congressional forum for the 7th Congressional District, and that will be held at Malcolm X College from 5:30 to 7:30. And so we are strongly encouraging the business community to come out to hear these candidates speak to their policy agendas, to hear from us as to what exactly we will need from them and how we will then work in partnership to ensure that we have some actionable steps and outcomes that will build, a legacy. We talk about generational wealth, but to really go deeper to understand what that really looks and means for our community.
So when you say that you'll have actionable accountability, does that mean that there will be accountability? Will there be a scorecard? Will there be some follow-up to make sure that these promises are actually kept? I'm always curious about that, because we vote based on promises, but how do we keep them accountable?
Absolutely. And then that's the reason why we are being very intentional about presenting to these candidates some very clear objectives that we have, and asking them the very direct question as to how do they plan to move the needle? How do they plan to work in tandem with their fellow members in Congress to get real action done, particularly in a climate such as this? And so we will not only be having this conversation on the front end of the election, but to create, as I said earlier, an ongoing, long-standing relationship where there is, reciprocal exchange of ideas, strategies, and then to make sure that we are energizing the electorate to make an informed decision.
Absolutely. One of the things that, hi, good morning. I think we have some background noise, but one of the things that I really commend you on is that your ability to reach across the aisles, which not happening on Capitol Hill, where you understand the power of collective energy and synergy, bringing people together. So my hat's off to you for having a spirit of reaching out, because I think we can't win. One man or one woman with $10 has power, but 10 women with $1 have greater power, and I think you embodied that. So one of the things I think, when we take a look in the state of Illinois, when it comes to procurement, there are a lot of issues that we look forward to working with the BLC on in terms of the sheltered market. There's a lot of issues when it comes to procurement that we have been, kind of turned a blind eye to, or we're not talking about, that has so much impact. And so I'm looking forward from a chamber perspective to sit down with you, with the Chicago Minority Supplier Group, in order to make sure that the issues that we see that has a dramatic impact upon Black businesses, that we're addressing those issues and making sure that we participate where our dollars help create the opportunity.
All right. I want to go ahead and grab a caller real
Okay.
quick. Let's go ahead and grab Karen. Hi, Karen.
Well, hello and good morning to all of you all. Listen,
morning.
the question was, does business and politics go together? Most definitely. And the reason why we're seeing so dismantle and so poverty in our community is because too many politicians have gone into these positions with no type of skills or education or even experience of being a business owner. Politics is business. America is a business. So what's happening now, because our politicians that we elected, or many got selected, went into these positions, and guess what? They got in and they realized, wow, wait a minute, I can make money. I can make money from inside, knowing how politics work. So right now, the world, the constituents, the people, the sincere ignorant ones are now becoming more aware of business. So yes, business and politics go hand in hand, and politics is everywhere. If you come in my house, you're going to play my politics. So, yes, it is time for the world, not just those that think they arrived or they got their degrees or they're in this position. Because if you look around, somebody don't know what they're doing. Politics and business go together.
Amen. Now, she said it, right?
She did.
Well, hey, if anyone wants to add something onto that, go right ahead, Attorney Robert Johnson and Ms. Barrett.
Well, I think the caller nailed it. For far too long, we have allowed ourselves to be distracted and to function in silos. And so the more that we are empowering our communities and our business leaders to understand the importance of public policy and how that will shape their ability to have access to capital and lending practices, how it will impact their ability to have a fair and equitable opportunity to compete for contracts, to make sure that there is capacity building and programs that are going to be designed to ensure that, we have ability to participate. I always talk about, Reverend Jackson used to say that we didn't know how great baseball could be until everybody could play. And so this is an opportunity for our community to demonstrate our sheer ability to move the economy, to make sure that we are, have a united front. And so again, the coalition of organizations that we are working with have a commitment to making sure that we're, functioning collectively, and by demonstrating and modeling the behavior that we expect to see in all facets of our community. And so this is, a time of trepidation for some, but it's also a time of triumph if we approach it from a collective perspective.
All right. I'm going to go popcorn style to these callers. Robert, did you have something to add before I grab one?
Yeah, just real quick. One of the things that the caller said that I want to touch upon, which was a subtle point that she made at the outset, was that she talked about the training of our politicians. And one of the things that I've heard from a number of politicians that I've spoken to is that two things. A lot of the folks who are in office were not business owners. And so that the point that she made about them not necessarily having a keen understanding of what it's like to be a business owner or an entrepreneur is an issue that we have to address in our community. The quote that was given to me numerous times is that, people like you don't run for office. A lot of times it's folks that are from the community, from the clergy, from faith-based organizations, which is nothing wrong with that. But that doesn't necessarily make them best equipped to address some of the challenges from a business perspective that we have in our community. And I think the part of the issue is that a lot of entrepreneurs, as we're talking about, reflect the overall sentiment of the community that politics is is dirty or unnecessary or have an aversion towards it. And we have to dismiss that notion. We have to be engaged in politics as entrepreneurs, as business owners, and look for ways to engage in public service, because that voice and that perspective is needed. Otherwise, the politicians that we have, if we don't engage with them directly and give them our perspective, or if we don't run for office and share our perspective and look at and enact policies from a educated perspective that will impact business positively, then our communities are going to continue to suffer.
Hey, Counselor, thanks a lot for that. Let's go ahead and take some other callers.
All right, we got Al Stone. Al Stone, real quick, how you doing?
Real quick, my first experience with plumbing came through the Office of Procurement with the MBE company. I was just a laborer. I quickly found out that it wasn't an MBE company, and actually the white guys ran it and had a black face. No biggie. My question is there any black trust that's been eroded through this procurement process, and do we need a DOJ investigation to help us?
Thank you.
Well, I would say absolutely, from a perspective, anytime we find anything that undermines our participation, whether it be a pass-through organization, and there are pass-throughs out there that were, and I'm going to give this quick statistic. At the federal government side, Office of Budget and Management, African Americans get 1.35% of all federal contracts. Hispanics do a little bit better at 1.85% at the federal level. White males get over 92% of all federal contracts, and they holler equal protection under the law. Anytime there is any barrier that stops us from participating and creating equity and fairness, because like Ken Duncan used to say, there's no discrimination when it comes to collecting taxes. There ought to be no discrimination when it comes to getting contracts. It's not as simple as that, because we got to get prepared. We got to know how to get done what we need to get. We got to play the politics. We got to get better at this game. So thanks a lot, caller.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Lorenzo.
Yeah, and real quick, I wanted to say this because I know Ms. Barrett had mentioned, in the beginning of her conversation that we're still fighting for the opportunity, to have a seat at the table. And my question, I got a two-part question: is having a seat at the table a guarantee that those who don't want us to become independent of their power, that they will work with us? And I know Art had mentioned something, and I have this question. To effectively negotiate with those who are at war with us, with our success and independence, because I guess my question is: are we more of a commodity to other people's business and success, or do we have the potential to become a partner that they can negotiate with? Honestly.
Well, you're asking that question of our guests, because I'll jump right. But
yes.
Go ahead, Robert or Ms. Barrett, if you want to respond to that question real quick. And we got a bucket of other callers waiting to get on. So if we can respond to that quickly, then we'll keep on moving.
So I would say simply, it's about creating a value proposition. And, what we have seen already with many of the rollbacks to DEI programs, there were, proclamations made that were not supported by actual budgets or real intentions to be inclusive. And so this is also an opportunity for us to demonstrate our value and our ability to work in tandem with one another. And so another piece of the work that we're doing at the BLC is creating what we call the BLC bubble. For every major line item in the city, the state, the county, the federal budget, we have the ability to source talent. And so what we have to do is demystify this notion of even being able to work together as African-American businesses. And so by demonstrating that, I believe that it really underscores the fact that it just makes good business sense to be inclusive of a talent pool that exists within the African-American community. And we have to believe that, and not only believe it, but to demonstrate it and to live that out.
Absolutely. Next call.
What I would add, Lorenzo, again, I can't remember if this was Jesse Jackson that said this as well, but when you talk about having a seat at the table, You often hear that, but when you have to have a seat at the table, you have to recognize that when you're sitting at that table, if you have a pea shooter and the other person has a Glock, you're not really sitting at that table. And so that means that we got to sit at the table with an equal amount of firepower and ammunition as the other people that are sitting at that table. And so again, that's why our collective coming together as a business community is important, because we have to flex when we're sitting at that table. It's not enough to sit at the table. We got to be able to influence who gets the biggest piece of chicken.
Absolutely.
I love it. Is it fried? Okay, let's keep going. We only got 8 minutes. All right, Michael, you're up next.
Hi, good morning. I have a question. Well, first of all, my name is Michael O'Connor. I raised $12 million as an independent revenue enhancer here in the state of Illinois, specifically for African American healthcare organizations dealing with the issue of HIV. That 12 million was raised through the Quality of Life lottery, which was an independent revenue as far as enhancer. I have background in terms of legislative experience that has far as affected our community with the expungement second chance legislation. I also got that through. My question specifically is about HB 1437. That is a House bill that deals directly with African American trade unions and the ability to sit at these tables where procurement is being dealt with. What has and what will the organizations that are coalescing now be able to, how are they addressing that? Because the legislative session just started. You need 60 votes in order to get this legislation through. If you deem this as an appropriate piece, that is House Bill 1437. Could someone be able to answer that question for me?
Well, I would simply say that real quickly, Mr. O'Connor, is that there's a lot of legislation that happens in Springfield. Sometimes, if we don't know about it as organizations, and if someone doesn't bring it to our attention, then we don't know about it. Because I find all the time, I find out there's a procurement that happens in the state of Illinois. Someone calls me up and says, Larry, hey, they had no goals on this procurement. It's $80 million. There's no goal. Well, I would have known that if someone hadn't told me. You're making a comment to us about a bill that's important. I think now that you brought it to the table, and that's why Black media and WVON and all Black media is so important. We have to leverage everything we have. We owe it to ourselves to strengthen Black media so Black media can get the word out and that we can coalesce around the issues that are important that we need to spend our time and energy on. I'll let our other guests respond if they have any comments in reference to it, but I think it's critical. Now that you have put it out there, please feel free to contact the chamber because we're heavily involved on the construction side. And there's a lot of other construction companies and organizations that I believe if they understood the issue would engage and come and support that to make sure we get it to the finish line.
And that's ilbcc.org to get in touch with the chamber. And did you say the name of the company that didn't have a goal?
It's a contract being talked about right now that we're engaged in, AT&T, that has
and I'm a customer.
Right, you're a customer.
So should I ain't on contract
no
no more.
goals on. So we're looking into why we don't have a goal on a contract of that magnitude. And this is why what we do is so important. So I'll pause and, because I really want to give our guests the opportunity to kind of respond and give them some closing comments because this time goes really fast. And I'm really honored to have both incredible guests on the show today.
Well, I'll just quickly echo what you indicated, Larry. It's so critically important that we stay informed and educated. And by recognizing that, each of us has our pulse on, different pieces of legislation, different access to information. Again, it's so critical for us to make sure that we use platforms such as VON, that we're reaching out to our chambers, and that we're reaching out to our elected officials. I believe Robert said it earlier. It is not only important that we engage them or they engage us during election season, but that we build and cultivate a continued relationship that allows us to, make their job, more impactful by arming them with information that will really translate into deliverables for our constituents and our community.
Thank you. Well,
the only thing that I would add is that one of the things that we don't really have, again, is a cohesive Black agenda. It's in the works, but when the opportunities or information like this comes about, we should have a framework by which we can articulate our perspective and hopefully in a collective manner. Because again, every time I've sat down with a politician and explained to them what the issue is, they all, to a T, they all end the conversation the same way. What do you want me to do? So you got to be able to have an answer to that question.
Love it.
Because you got to be able to, they're there for that reason, for you to put them into action. So we got to have a response to that question every time. It can't just be a complaint. It's got to be an action item.
All right. I'm going to go to the caller, our last caller of this hour, and that is Tianki. Tianki, welcome to the Wake Up Show Chicago.
Well, LaDonna, your businesses and your constituents control your politicians, like Danny Davis in their district. Your politicians control your police. Now, your U.S. senators, they're in charge of bringing in big, heavy industry in the state, like a Boeing or like a Caterpillar or somebody like that. Black businesses should form associations pertaining to the category of businesses that they're in. And on the construction side, the general construction, shall I say your commercial construction, those contractors are supported by the Association of General Contractors, which is nationwide. Mm-hmm. Constituents have to control their politics.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're getting ready to wrap up, and we want to give each of our guests, LaDonna, an opportunity. We only got about 2 minutes left, so we're going to ask you if you'll be brief, give us any closing thoughts, and then we'll come back and wrap it up. Okay?
Real quick.
We just look forward to seeing our business leaders be present on February 12th and the 19th for this candidates forum. And again, this is about empowering our community and making sure we're exercising our voice and being part of the solution for transforming and sustaining our communities and neighborhoods.
All right. Robert?
Business and politics are a participatory sport. You have to get engaged. You have to get involved. My favorite quote from Voltaire is that the only thing that it takes for evil to prevail is for good folks to do nothing.
All right. That's the easiest thing to do. And you know what? I hate the hardest thing to do is to end the show right on time because we don't want to get in trouble. But I want to thank our guests, Robert Johnson and Kiana Barrett, for doing what you guys do. And of course, Dr. Larry Ivory for allowing us to be a part of the show. Lorenzo T. Hughes, you are amazing and we slid in when we could, but there were a lot of us involved in today's show. Make sure that you pay attention to the forums, pay attention to the votes, make sure you're registered. Also trickle that water because it's extra cold. So you don't want busted pipes, but go to ilbcc.org and become involved as a sponsor or become a member. You can do that 24/7 because the website is up and awaiting. And we'll be back here next Saturday for the Wake Up Show Chicago at 9 a.m. Make sure you share the show, comment on the show continuously, and tell everybody to listen to this particular segment so that we can get information out to you when it comes to business. Also, I'll be back on Monday for the afternoon show.
Wake Up Chicago.
Well, no, that's you. Monday, I'll be here for the afternoon show. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shameless plug, All right, guys. Thank you. And bye-bye for now.
Get ready to wake up to the pulse of progress as we amplify voices, break barriers, and illuminate the path towards a more inclusive tomorrow. Follow us across the socials at The Wake Up Show Chicago. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. It's The Wake Up Show every Saturday morning at 9, where change begins with every sunrise.
Welcome to The Wake Up Show Chicago.
That's the end?